This is our panel with our community leaders. We have three incredible women that are coming up to speak with you. I will let them introduce themselves, but one of my outstanding students that actually works with me at the Center for the Political Future will be moderating. Her name is Taya, so if you give her a warm welcome. Walk in my dog too.
Thank y'all. I'm so excited to be moderating this panel. We have some amazing women that we're hearing from today, and I'm going to be asking them some questions, but I'll ask them to introduce themselves first and just talk about what work they do and how they got to this point. If you guys want to start, do we have the second mic? Okay. So I'm going to keep one mic, and then y'all are all going to share one mic and just pass it around, if that's all right. Excellent. So yeah, and if you just want to start, introduce yourself. What do you do now? How did you get to this point, basically, in your career?
Thanks, Taya. Good afternoon. I'm Amy Turk. I'm currently the CEO Downtown Women's Center, a local nonprofit in the downtown Los Angeles area. A volunteer experience really defined my career as when I was a freshman. I came from Colorado to Pepperdine and started volunteering in a shelter for women and have worked in that field ever since. That's about 23 years now.
Thank you. I'm Noelia Rodriguez, and I was listening to the admissions director before we came on, and she was talking about special scholarships for tall people, and I would qualify for a short people scholarship because I can barely touch the bottom of this chair. It's been the secret of my success, always reaching higher than where I stand. So I started in public service a long time ago. Actually, at City Hall, downtown in Los Angeles. If many of you who are from the LA area, of course you all are, know City Hall. And if you haven't actually been in, I would encourage you to go in and take a tour because nothing inspires you like walking around the halls of power and seeing things getting done. And it takes away the mystery of public service. And so I would encourage you to do that as you're exploring what's next in your life's journey. And fortunately for me, that's where it all started. And so I won't go into details about, every job that I had, but it actually led to me working at the White House about 20 years ago when I worked for President Bush and Laura Bush when I was the Director of Communications for the First Lady. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll turn the mic over to my next panelist.
Hi, I'm Fumiko Dominguez. I'm the Director of Federal Relations at UCLA. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm happy that you all have me, even though I'm not a Trojan. And really, like the rest of my panel, my journey started as an internship. So I felt very strongly about doing public service. I have a very long family history of serving our country in the military. I decided I wanted to go a different route, but I still felt a need to serve. And so I tried to get a job at a federal agency during the recession when I got out of grad school, and I couldn't. So I took an unpaid internship with Speaker Pelosi's office because I'm from San Francisco. And then I just kind of worked my way up, and I worked for Congress for quite a while until UCLA poached me as the Assistant Director of Federal Relations, and I've worked my way up there, and now I'm the Director. So really excited to be here with all of you and to meet some of you after, and thanks for listening to us.
So we have some incredible backgrounds, incredible careers, and we're going to hear all about it. So all of you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I heard, volunteer experience, tours of City Hall, a family with a background in public service. But what really drew you into a career in public service? Why is that what you chose to pursue? Whoever wants to start.
Oh, I'll start. So actually, when I was in college and right after college, I definitely had said to myself, I never want to work in public service. I really just closed the door to that opportunity because I had a stereotypical attitude about what goes on in government. You're going to push pencils and shuffle paper and really never get anything done. So flash forward to, 10 years later, and I was working at Southern California Edison, the headquarters, just down the road about 10 miles. And I was working in corporate communications. By that time, I had gotten my college degree at night. I actually worked full-time during the day and got my degree at night. And I got into CorpCom, and one day I got a phone call from somebody who was working in the mayor's office in 1994, which was before your parents were even born, probably. And I got a phone call from somebody who was working with the mayor, and she said, fax over your resume because I think there might be an opening for a press secretary for the mayor. And I said, oh, no, thank you. I don't really want to work in government. Thank you very much. And she said, no, you don't understand. This could be big. So I sent my resume. I get a phone call. A week later, I'm interviewing in the mayor's office, my first time at City Hall. And then they call me 2 weeks later to interview with the mayor. And in between, there had been a massive earthquake. In fact, the 10 freeway right outside of the boundaries of USC had collapsed, literally collapsed in the Northridge earthquake. And so they were crazy busy at City Hall. And one of the things that I loved when I worked at Edison, and I'm still good at, is crisis communications. So when I got to interview with the mayor, they were like working 100 miles an hour trying to recover the city. So I interviewed with the mayor, and I was so excited to be so close to somebody who was so meaningful for the city of Los Angeles and turning Los Angeles around. And they offered me the job 2 days later, and without even looking back, I said yes. And I never looked back after that. I loved public service, and I'm very proud to say that I was wrong about my perception. So that's lesson number one that I would impart on you. Don't be afraid to admit that you were wrong, that you might have had preconceptions or notions that were not based on fact or experience. There's nothing wrong with being wrong as long as you write the course going forward. And that's what happened to me. And here we are all these years later, and I've had a phenomenal journey in public service, and I would encourage all of you to do it as an intern, as a volunteer, in nonprofit, in government. There's a place for everybody, and everybody has a place to make for themselves in public service.
For me, it was, even from a young age, I felt something just in my gut that when I was helping other people, it's when I felt better, right? And it was something that I was drawn to. So the idea of not doing public service never crossed my mind. It was just, how do I get this feeling of helping people and turn that into a job, right? So in grad school, I thought that I was going to be the world's youngest Foreign Service officer. I got a master's degree in international relations. And I'm like, of course, I'm going to join the Foreign Service. I got really far in the interview process, and they were like, you were 22. Come back when you got some life experience. And I was devastated. But then I kept applying to federal agencies. Some offered me jobs that I decided I didn't want to work for. The ones I wanted to work for, I didn't get a job with. And then one day I went to my mentor, which is funny now, and I said, I can't get a job in government. I don't know what to do. She's like, you're like an actress that won't move to Hollywood. How are you going to get an acting job without living in Hollywood? If you want to work for government, you got to go to DC. But then I quickly found out you had to take unpaid internships living in DC, and I came from a very humble family. I didn't have, the means to take an unpaid internship, so I got a second job, and then I got a third job, and I really worked nonstop for almost a year to have enough in savings to go take this unpaid internship in DC. And then I turned that unpaid internship into a paid position, and then I was promoted and promoted and promoted. And I think the reason that I moved up so quickly is that DC, and some folks here can speak on it, it can be really competitive, right? It's a zero-sum game. Everyone's out to get everyone. And I just didn't buy that. I studied international relations. I'm like, there's a way that we all can be successful. So instead of if I did good on something and hoarding that information, I shared it with my other interns, with my other staff assistants, with my other colleagues, because if I was succeeding and they were succeeding, then we can all succeed together. So I think that it's important to lean into kindness, even if you're in an environment that doesn't manifest that, right? And I think that really having that kindness, making time for people, that really has been a key part of my success.
I was raised with parents that still today really look out for the needs of others, and without being asked, they can kind of intuitively know if someone needs a little guidance or help. And I wasn't aware of that growing up, but in retrospect, I think that gave me the seeds of wanting to be in a helping profession. And I perhaps, based on media, only thought that meant being a therapist, which is great, and I'm qualified to do so. But when I got to school, I realized I enjoyed being in community more than being in like a room with one person. And that was really piqued by how getting involved in volunteering. And the night that really crystallized, I think, my career was cooking a meal at a shelter. I had never cooked a meal for maybe more than 2 people before, but somehow managed with the help of people who lived in the shelter to prepare a meal for 20. I sat down with a woman who was in her 60s, and she shared her story of what brought her into experiencing homelessness. And she was on the cusp of signing a new lease and moving into a new apartment. I was not trained by the volunteer manager before that experience. I gave my address. We corresponded with each other, which was against the policies of the shelter, but no harm was done. And I followed, we corresponded and learned about each other a little bit as she moved back into a home and I was progressing in my career. Flash forward a few years, I ended up working in that shelter, and she needed more health care, and she needed hospice care, and she was dying in a nursing home at that time. And I went to go see her, and at the foot of her bed, she opened her eyes and she goes, "Pepperdine." And it was just like a really special relationship. And that relationship, having those relationships with now thousands, sadly, unfortunately, so many people are experiencing homelessness, of people, like, keeps me in this work. And that really just, that moment just solidified to me an understanding of what social work meant, and I pursued a career in social work.
Thank you all so much for sharing a little bit of your career journeys. I hope some of you heard parts of maybe your journey in the stories that y'all have been telling us. So obviously those journeys are not without their challenges. So how do you learn to embrace failure? Whoever wants to start again.
I fail all the time. I grew up playing sports, and there are 2 tracks. You either win or you learn. And if you're not winning, you have to take the time to think about what went wrong and how do you make sure it doesn't go wrong again. Because I'm okay to fail. If I don't fail every once in a while, that means I'm not really reaching and trying to get to that next thing. I'm not growing. I'm not pushing my boundaries. I'm not stepping outside of my comfort box. What I don't want to do is fail in the same thing twice, right? So after every failure, I really take time to assess, okay, what did I do? What could I have done differently? Who could I have reached out to in my community to get the support that I need? Who could I have delegated that to? What scenario led to this failure? And then I learned from it. Because I really do think that, failure helps push you to be better. At least it helps me to be better. And if I'm not pushing myself and I'm just getting comfortable, then I'm also getting bored, and I don't do well being bored. So I say try it, jump, and if you don't fall, at least next time you know how it feels to skin your knee, and you'll be a little more careful, and maybe you'll jump and you'll run first or whatever, right? You'll figure it out.
Yeah, the first thing that came to mind when you asked that question is that failure was often imposed on me. I didn't even get a chance to try. So because I'm a woman of color, a woman who didn't have my college degree right after high school, so I had to go, it was a different route, more challenging, not as, direct as other people had it, but I wouldn't change any minute of it at all. Because to me, I would be told things from my bosses like, well, you're too young, you had that. You don't have the experience. You have an accent. Your age. I actually had a supervisor say to me, I was doing all the things like you had done to try to get to the next place. And the supervisor said to me, you're a woman. Women can't do this. And this was a long time ago. You wouldn't have that now. But I experienced that all. Or I also had the, maybe in a year. So then I bust my behind to prove myself for a year. And then, maybe not yet. Next year. And it could be very demoralizing, but to me, it was always a challenge. And I think when the heavens opened up and I had the opportunity to go work in the mayor's office, it was the universe's way of saying, you need to leave that safe place behind, even though you've been successful. It took you a long time, but you did it. It's time to go challenge yourself somewhere else. And I have to say, when I went to work at City Hall, it was not easy. I would go home and cry every night because it was a challenge, but I was back the next morning proving myself that I could get it right. And the mayor and I still to this day are still friends because we developed this lifelong relationship and friendship. And I learned so much from him. And I want to say what I started with about failure being imposed on me. I had the good fortune of going to work for President George W. Bush. And when he was governor in Texas, I was working at City Hall with the mayor, and he had this great line that I always thought was so inspirational for people who come from our backgrounds. And he just is against the soft bigotry of low expectations. We have to recognize that still exists and do what we can to fight it every single day, even in our own little spaces.
I think you're not really relevant as a leader right now if you can't embrace failure, vulnerability, failing forward. What you were saying, I find that if I harden up and I'm like barreling through or pretending like I know everything, it is not accepted, and I cannot lead people anymore. But if I share what I've learned, the lessons learned from something that we've been through or a time when I've just flopped on my face, that people really resonate. And you, again, back to the relationships, at least where I work, that is the type of leader that my staff want from me. And I notice that I'm influencing people who support the center too, our board of directors in that way, kind of leading with a different voice that shows vulnerability. Especially, we're dealing with homelessness, and that brings up a lot of vulnerabilities and feelings. And I think if I don't lead with my heart, that it's just not working. But that it's been said, take chances. I've applied for jobs before my time. I didn't get one that I was really hell-bent on. And it was an opportunity to show everyone in that organization that I was interested. And then they gave me other opportunities, more exposure in different meetings or trainings or mentorship. And so I didn't get that one opportunity then, but it opened up 5 doors instead of just 1 door. At the time, it felt like a failure, but it wasn't. It was fine.
That's a great point. That's such a great point, because you might be so focused on getting this one thing and it doesn't work out, and don't realize that if you just look around, it opens other doors that are better than the one that you were trying to get through. And that's also another lesson that I think all of us would share. Be open to the other opportunities, because again, it's in my way of speaking, it's the universe guiding you to where really it's the better place for you to be, so you can make a greater impact, not just for yourself, but for others, just like Amy's doing.
So in all of that perseverance and resilience and vulnerability, how do you stay motivated while avoiding burnout?
I don't know.
So I actually wondered for a really long time in my career, and I just realized it recently. I always wondered, do I have like a professional limit? Can I get there? Is anything, because I'm always the one, I've been trying so hard to prove myself, get promoted, do the thing, say yes to everyone. Do I have a professional limit? And I've always, because I'm just such a workhorse, right? I just sit down, put my head down, do the work. And recently I learned, I very much have a professional limit. And so that really came upon me the last few months where, I got a big promotion at work. I took on more parts of campus, thank you. And really just because of all of the great work that I've done, I've planted all these seeds around UCLA and I've been watering them, and they all just started blooming at the same time, which is great, but it just takes a lot of time to garden. And so I found myself at a place that I did hit, that professional the wall that, okay, I'm on the verge of burnout. So I had to do something really hard, and I had to take a step back and say, okay, these are all the things that I'm working on. I feel passionate about every single one of them. I can't do all of this. I'm dropping balls. I'm not performing at the level that I expect myself to perform at. What do I have to let go, and who am I going to ask for help? And that's hard, I think, as probably the newest leader on this panel, to let go of stuff and to trust others to take your baby and make sure that it grows up to be a functioning project or whatever. And so I've had to really lean in and embrace that this last 6 months. And I got to say, it feels good to let go of a project and see someone else be successful with it. Something that was your idea that you've, cultivated, and then being able to hand that off. And so I'm really excited to keep working on these newfound skills and keep letting stuff go, because that's going to free up my time to do other things that I think are going to be really exciting. But that's something that I really have been working on. So I've been, doing a lot of pottery. I do pottery in my free time. I work out like crazy because otherwise I just get in my head, and I hang out with my family and my pets.
Gosh, actually, that's the recipe for success. I would say, learn how to say no. As women, I know I was brought up to be the good girl and say yes and step up and do whatever they can't do or do it for them. And that's not happening anymore. I don't do that anymore. But I've learned how to say no. And that just means you're saying yes to yourself, which is important, a value that would be important for you to really acquire. The other thing, which has been harder for me, is to say nothing. Because sometimes you get these, we need this done, and there's a group of people and we need this done, and ordinarily I'll do it because you can do it in half an hour. You got to sit on your hands and say nothing. There comes a point where it's like, let somebody else have the experience. I've had that experience, and it's time for somebody else to step up. And there's nothing wrong with that. You should feel good about saying nothing.
I'm thinking back to high school and college, and I feel like those days were so long and challenging. And I remember I'm never going to lose my empathy for students while I was sitting there like doing all the things. And in some ways, maybe it got a little better because there's some like guidelines around work and a little bit of, we can work ourselves many hours, but there's also a lot of guidelines around the expectation of in a work environment. So, and for me, I found what I want to do, and I found something I'm very passionate about, and that helps prevent like total burnout. But I always have to and I don't think I'm a role model on all the things that I know that I should do to take care of myself better. Because it's just so easy to sit at your computer 2 more hours, or, try to do something a little bit more to be a little more ready for the next day. So yeah, I don't have a lock on how to not burn out or how to have ideal self-care, but it's definitely something to always think about and try to get a lot of support around.
So this is the Young Women's Leadership Conference, and we have a whole room full of leaders here. So what is your most impactful leadership lesson that you learned?
I have to think about that for a second. If you have one, go ahead. Yeah.
I touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think that one thing, it's important to be kind and to help others, right? The people sitting to the right and the left of you, like these are the people they're going to come up with. And so making sure that you take that moment to be helpful, right? I think that the kindness is overrated, or it's not, it's overrated. It's overrated in the sense that it's so, people just don't think about it anymore. And it's so important, right? So I think kindness, that's the first thing. And I think the other thing that is just so important is that your reputation, your professional reputation, you're building that now. And that's going to follow you. You get trust by drops, you lose it by buckets. So if you say you're going to do something, do it. And if you can't do it, just be honest and transparent, and that's going to serve you, right? So protect your reputation, build it carefully, help those around you, and really lead with kindness. I think those are the three most important pieces.
I absolutely agree with all of those. And I would add to that, don't be afraid to ask for help. I think that's been one of my challenges in my career, being afraid to ask for help because you think it might show that you're weak or you're not smart enough or not capable enough. Fortunately, those days are much fewer now than before, but I still feel that sometimes that, I can do it myself. It'll be faster. That's just a fallacy. It's important, and it's a sign of strength, actually, that you include others in a partnership or a project that you're working on. The other thing I would say, which both Ashley and Amy mentioned, is, and I alluded to it, is find mentors in your life, not just one, but several, and not several all at the same time necessarily. In school, whether it's a counselor or a teacher or an upper division student or an alum or something like that, in the workplace, through other social networks. It's so important to have somebody support you and encourage you when you feel challenged or when you don't know. So the person who was here earlier talking about financial and admissions and financial aid, I never in high school would have dreamed of doing that because when I was a freshman, I was incredibly shy and very, very introverted. I still am, but not as much when I was in high school. But I knew that I wanted to go to college, but nobody in my family had ever gone to college. So I didn't know what questions to ask or how it all worked. So I mustered the courage to see my freshman year counselor. And I remember sitting across the desk from him, and he said, he's looking at my file, which I don't know what was in there, but he's looking at my file, and I told him why I was there. And he says, shuts the file, and he says, college is not for you. You need to take typing and shorthand so you could be a secretary and get a job after high school. So, of course, voice of authority, that's what I did. I took typing and shorthand. I never even considered going to college after high school, but I still knew that one day it was in my future. So, I finally got my degree and surrounded myself. I had a supervisor who had confidence in me, and he's the one who told me, go to school at night. You can still get your degree while you're working full time, because I was supporting myself, my mom, and my single mom and my three brothers and sisters. So that's how I did it. It was a different path that this guy who was a boss, middle-aged white guy, he didn't look like me. He didn't come from my experience, but he saw something in me. And so to this day, I'm still friends with him. So I would encourage you to find mentors. Even today, before you leave campus, make a connection with somebody from the Center for the Political Future. Get their information, contact them, send them a note, ask them questions, come back on campus. This is just the first day of your journey. This is not the end of your journey. When today's finished, it's just the beginning. Just the day ends, but your journey starts today. And please, please, please take advantage of it.
I think I learn all the time. It's not always what the product is or the final decision is. It's how you go through a process. People remember how you treated them and how you made them feel. They don't necessarily remember what results you worked on together. And even unpopular or hard to convey things in a work environment or in your life, if you do it in a way that respects people, brings people along, doesn't blindside people, I find that if you build a process that is more transparent and very proactive in communication, then you can get to the what all on the same page, even if people don't disagree, or even if people do disagree on the what. So I really think about that when you have to make decisions in leadership roles, how to bring people with you and to take a lot of time on the how and sometimes less time on the what you're trying to get people to.
Definitely. So definitely some very excellent leadership advice. What advice would you guys give to yourselves as high school students? Pretty classic question, yes.
My values and my politics and a lot of things that I thought were super true in high school, or I have a 180-degree different perspective on. And I was pretty rigid in a lot of what I thought was true growing up. And, you know, when I look back, what cracked that rigidity was travel, education, getting to know people, relationships, volunteering, being more civically involved. And I feel better off for that.
Thank you. I would totally say get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I was never comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I do it all the time, and it's actually makes my life more fun. But I would say to my high school self, don't take life so seriously. I was just so, obviously there were issues at home and helping support the family and all of that. But there was always time, and I reflect now that I lost that time, to have fun, to find joy, to be with friends, to make new friends. I think last year when I was at this panel, I think I said something like, make sure you're going to meet people today that come from a different school or a different part of the city. You should make new friends, even if you just exchange ideas of what you're experiencing today, because the friends that you make now, I'm telling you, you may have them for the rest of your lives until you're my age. That's a long time, but they are so worthwhile to have. And you're going to look back and you think, wow, I really took advantage of the opportunity. So have fun and travel, which is you don't realize what is going on in the world until you leave our, borders. You go to other parts of the world. Of course, when I worked at the White House, I traveled all around the world. And you'd be amazed how people in other countries, taxi drivers, waiters, service employees, know so much about our country because they admire us. And because we're in it, we tend to forget it. So feel the wealth that is all around you and take advantage of it. And I guess the other thing I would say is be okay with not having all the answers. You probably are getting asked, what are you going to do after high school? What are you, or after college or whatever? I don't even know what I'm going to do next week. So just take the pressure off of yourself. It's okay not to know the answer, but it's really important to be open to the possible answers. That's what I would say.
So I'm actually going to steal something from Nancy Pelosi for the first part, and it's know your power. And then there's a second part to it that I think is really important, and she has a bunch of books, and it's through there. But the second part is don't let anyone take your power from you. And when Noelle was speaking earlier, she made a comment about, somebody in her high school that essentially said she wasn't smart enough to go to college. And I would love if that didn't happen to me, but it did. And what I did was when I got my master's degree, I sent an announcement to that counselor at school, and I said, oh, I guess you were wrong. But, I think the point of it here, I know you're laughing, but, there are lots of young ladies that I mentor even now that are in high school, and that kind of thing is still happening. People are saying you're not smart enough, your English isn't good enough, you're a little too dark, you're undocumented, like whatever. Like, don't let them take it from you. And just know that, you only can't do it if you let yourself not try, right? The answer is always going to be no if you don't ask the question. So just keep going. And just because one jerk or two jerks or 20 jerks say that you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're not whatever, who cares? Just keep doing it, right? And I think that's the most important part. Just keep doing it, keep trying. And like we said earlier, if you fail, just keep going. You're only not good enough if you internalize that you're not good enough, but you are.
Oh, No, I was just going to say, as you were speaking, I was thinking, why didn't I do that to that counselor? I should have sent them a note. Guess what? I'm the first Mexican American press secretary in the history of the White House.
He probably found out. He probably knew.
I should have sent the press release.
He got the memo. I also just wanted to add on and just connect a couple of things y'all were saying. Don't let anyone take your power. There will be people that tell you no, and then rely on your friends to tell you yes. Rely on your friends and the people that you might meet today to continue to tell you, no, you got this. You can go to college. You can do whatever you want to do. Have that support system. I just wanted to connect the kindness and, don't let anyone take your power. So I have one last question for y'all before we move on to the audience questions. But are there any tangible tips or resources you can give us for getting more civically engaged? Go ahead.
So it's going to sound so silly, but those Schoolhouse Rock videos or whatever on how government works, they're so silly, right? But they really do explain things quite well. So that's, as somebody that spent a big bulk of her career working for Congress and now spending the next bulk of her career trying to lobby Congress, I think, if you're trying to figure that out, that's one thing. Just kind of figure out how the government works. But I think the other thing is that you all live in communities. And, Tip O'Neill said all politics is local, and that really is true. So figure out who your neighbors are, get to know them. If they need help carrying their groceries in, help them carry their groceries in if they're older or, not able-bodied. Make friends with people that are down the street. Go to your community centers, your churches, whatever it might be. And really, when you have the time, volunteer and invest in your community, right? I think that that's really, really important in any community that you live in.
That's true. So true. Now, unfortunately, because journalism is in the state that it's in, years ago when I was a press secretary at City Hall, there were always reporters covering local cities, not just LA City Hall, but they would cover pretty much all the city bureaus throughout the state. And unfortunately, because that doesn't happen anymore, you have to be a more active citizen to find out what's going on at your local government. And so I would encourage you to do that and connect with your council member and see if you can get on a commission. Volunteer for a commission. There are commissions out there in all different areas, on homeless issues, transportation, which is what I'm into now, education, whatever it is. Just look on the website for your local city, opportunities to see what there is and keep trying. Don't just try once. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. Just keep trying, because that's one thing that they're looking for is people who want to be actively engaged in local government.
Thanks. Yeah. Volunteering. I got my first cell phone as a graduation gift from college. So we were not tweeting at our elected officials or, activism was a little more like sitting down with someone or yelling at someone in an office or being more in community. Now we have more tools to be involved in. Social media is perfectly a good tool to use, but to also remember to step out of that too and being physically in community or, on the phone or in more relationship. And, if you don't see it happening, start it. Taya has started activism work around homelessness at USC. She didn't see it as prominently addressed, and where there's a gap, that's really a great place for your leadership if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, I definitely recommend starting your own club. It's very fun. Okay, I think we're gonna do questions from the audience. How should we? Yeah.
Just raise your hand and then I'll send you the mic.
This is for, I forgot your name, I'm so sad, Noelia. As being a Mexican American, obviously representing, I love that, I stan. What would you, as a first generation college student, how would you advise us to continue not saying, to learning how to say no, but still continuing being effective in our communities, but still, putting ourselves as a priority,
Right.
and, continuing that.
Absolutely. So find what it is that you're interested in or that affects your life. Like, let's say you're going to, it's something related to local government. There's a council motion that's on the agenda that's going to affect your neighborhood. So go to that council meeting, and as Amy said, speak up, and there's always a section of public comment. They have to listen to your voice. They don't get a choice. You get the choice whether you want to use your voice or not. So be prepared with the facts and how it's impactful. That's more influential than, just writing. You could write a letter, but if you do both and come and speak in person, you should do that. But saying no, I want to just underscore that it's not to say no just to say no. Be thoughtful about it. Why are you saying no? Just like you should be thoughtful about why you're saying yes to something. Because as Ashley said, that goes to your integrity. That goes to what you stand for, so that after you do this over the course of your life, there's a pattern. There are things that represent your values that people will come to know you for that, and you will know yourself for that, which is more important. So that when you do get to that point, there's something behind it. Just as I was saying earlier, know when to say nothing. That's also important because, there are some people who speak just because they like the sound of their own voice, and so people in the room also think that guy just likes the sound of his own voice. Nothing he says is going to be meaningful, right? So if you become that person, you're just chatter. Versus if you're thoughtful about what you're doing, when you speak, then people listen because it means something. There's something behind that. And I feel like Ashley has it.
There's something I want to follow up on that. So there is this incredible leader at UCLA. Her name's Yolanda Gorman. She's the chancellor's chief of staff, and she's, I think, one of the most brilliant women I've ever met. And she does this thing in meetings that is, I'm trying so hard to emulate it because I just admire her so much. But she goes into a meeting and she just kind of sits there, and everyone says their thing, they la 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 la, and she just kind of sits there, and then when she speaks, she lays it down in such a beautiful, remarkable way that she's pulled together every thought that everybody has had and really has gone to the heart of the issue or the heart of the question, or has synthesized it in the most perfect way, because she didn't just spend that time in that meeting when everyone was talking, thinking about what color she was going to paint her nails or what she's going to have for dinner. She was really being an active listener. And I'm really, I spent a really long time being the first one to speak in the meeting because I wanted my voice to be heard. And as the young woman of color, no one wanted to listen to me. So I had to raise my hand first. And so really, in this next stage of my life, trying to figure out how to sit there and listen, it's really hard, but it's something to aspire to. She does it so beautifully. I just had to, yeah.
Somebody up here. Hello. Oh, my name is Rebecca. Nice to meet you guys. I wanted to it's not like to just one person, but if anyone can answer, what advice would you give to us as young women about confidence and just feeling like assured of yourself?
I'll give this to you.
I think this is, as a first gen kid, that looks a lot younger than I am, which I'm very thankful for. But, yeah, really, that part Japanese part's really doing me some solid favors right now. But oftentimes I walk into a room and people still say, oh, can you get me some coffee? And I'm like, well, I would love a tea, actually, if you're going, right? So I think that I've had to spend a lot of time dealing with what you're talking about, the imposter syndrome, making sure that I belong in that room, making sure that, my voice matters. And the way that I think about it is if I'm sitting in a room, and it happens all the time because of the industry I work in, sometimes I'm the only woman and I'm the only person of color at a table. So that means as the only woman in that room, I'm speaking for half of the United States population. first. As the only person of color, I'm speaking for the majority of the country now, right? So having that, and also it's so lame to say, but really just like faking it till you make it. Like, you tell yourself that you belong in that room, you tell yourself that you are worthy to be there, and eventually you tell yourself so many times you start to believe it. And I am not beyond putting lipstick on my mirror that it says something silly like, "You're brilliant," or whatever. And my husband laughs at me because I still do it sometimes, right? Like, you're smarter than he is, and whoever the he is, right? But so really whatever it takes. But this is where you lean on your community, and you lean on the other women in your life and the other men in your life that are there to help support you. But you got to practice it, and you got to practice it, and you got to practice it, and then you got to keep practicing it.
Absolutely right. And, it's watching other people is also a great way to do it. Like the woman that Ashley was talking about, you have teachers all around you and you don't even realize it. And they also don't realize that Ashley and others like her are watching. I mean, that's not why Ashley does her job or Amy does her job, but as a result of all of the good work that they're doing, or just the strategy or the kindness or the empathy, other people are watching that and you're learning from that. And that's the value that I think you would get in terms of your confidence level by doing that. And there are going to be times when you're going to doubt yourself. That happens. And that still happens to me. And then if I don't act on it, then I really beat myself up more than anybody else could for not having had the confidence to just say something or do something or whatever, fill in the blank it is. So that's something you also don't want to do too much of after a while. That just kind of spurs you to not hesitate the next time. I guess that's the word. Don't hesitate, because you got this. You've been there, you know it, you can do it. And other people aren't even thinking, does she have the confidence? They're not thinking that. They're just thinking you're stepping up. They're not thinking, who is she? You're thinking that. So don't give away your powers, as Ashley, I think, or Amy said, somebody did.
Yeah, everything you said. But I do remember one of my mentors when she said, just fake it till you make it, Amy. I've seen you do this. And I do that. Sounds silly, but it's true. And every week I'm scared to do something. I've learned that if my belly is queasy, or like if I really do feel sort of shaky, that's when I need to say the thing that's in my brain. When I've had that physical feeling, someone else has said it in the room, or it gets said outside of the meeting. Like everyone was thinking about it, but everyone was too scared to say it. I've kind of learned that my body tells me, what needs, but I'm freaking out for a meeting next Friday, and I know I'm going to nail it at the same time. So it just doesn't really go away for me.
That's your guy.
My name is Mia, and I have a question for Noelia, because earlier I heard you say how you, like, at a certain point in your life, you helped your single mom pay bills and raise your brothers. So I need advice on, like, how to not feel trapped in that state, and, like, how to, like, eventually move on without, like, letting your family down or feeling, like, attached, like...
I'm so sorry to hear those words, but I completely understand what you're feeling. Fortunately, my mom, I never felt trapped in it. I was the oldest of four, so I was the responsible one, and I still am. I mean, my brothers and my sister, they still ask me for advice because I've gone ahead of them. It's like the canary in the cave, right? So my heart hurts that you might have that experience. I'd love to chat with you afterwards if you'd like. But recognize that everybody else is important, but you're important too. There's just always remember that. You are no less important than anybody else. And you deserve what it is that you're trying to get for yourself, whether it's having the weekend off or going to whatever, event makes you happy, or going for a hike, or going to a movie. I don't even know what young people do anymore, but it doesn't matter. The point is that you get some space and some time for yourself, and then gradually you develop the confidence to say, it's my turn to fly. And that doesn't mean that you're going to cut your connection to your family. You're going to be connected to them for the rest of your life, but in a different way. And then then you become the role model for your brothers and your sisters. And even you become the role model for your mother, because she didn't see the things that you have available to you, I'm assuming that, but because you have it available to you, you're at once being the source of pride for her, but also the source of example for her. And what amazing power that would be for you. So reach for as high as you can, because even if you only get halfway, which I think you're going to get all the way, but even if you only get halfway, it's farther than you would have imagined before, because you need to take the strands off of your own hands, the bonds that are holding you back. You need to release those ribbons, because they're not handcuffs, they're ribbons. And tell me your name again. I'm sorry. Mia. Thank you for the question, Mia. That was very powerful. I hope that helped.
So my question is for your
Noelia. Noelia.
sorry, I'm not that much of a talker when it comes to things right now. I'm very much of an introvert. So I want to know that really ask you that how did you overcome to saying no, how to say no and how to stand up for yourself when you were young? Because I noticed that you said that you were more of an introvert person when you were younger. So how did you overcome saying no to people?
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations for asking the question. Everybody, let's give her a round of applause for having the confidence to ask a question. Because when I was at your age, I never would have raised my hand. So congratulations for doing that. It comes with practice. And what we said a little bit earlier, being comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's never going to go away. But the fact that you exercise that muscle, which I'm sure Ashley is very experienced in exercising muscles more than me, that's what it becomes, right? You're exercising your muscle. It's a different kind of a muscle. It's the muscle in your head. And so it's easy for me to say, I shouldn't say don't. I encourage you to try something as simple as, let's say you're at this lunch and they had an assortment of options for lunch and they offered you ham and you don't want ham, you want turkey. So even to say, I'd like to have the turkey instead, please. That's a step in that direction, voicing what it is that you want or prefer or what you don't want. It's not you're going to be nasty to anybody by saying no. You're just going to say it in a positive way. I think I'm going to take a pass on that this time. I think you'd be better at it. So let and if you need help, happy to help. But I think you would be better at it. That's a way of saying no. That's a way of saying yes to yourself and no to what the opportunity is, so that you've exercised a muscle in delegation, in diverting, which is what I'm really good at in my job, diverting the topic. As a press secretary, you do that quite often. So, that's just take baby steps. That's really how it starts. And then over time, you will be more comfortable when it's something that's even more substantive. And, but also get comfortable with saying yes to yourself. You're important just as everybody else is. You have your saying on your mirror. I have my saying on my refrigerator that I've had for 4 years. I was at a yoga class once, and the yogi said, write this down when you get home. I love myself right now the way I am today. That's still in my refrigerator, and I see it every day when I go into the kitchen. I love myself yesterday, but I love myself right now, and I'm going to love myself tomorrow even more than I do right now because of your awareness.
And I just have something to add on the introvert part, right? People are always shocked to hear this, but I am an introvert that's really good at pretending that I'm an extrovert, right? Because when you work in a job like mine, the whole thing is built on relationships. So I got to go up to people. I have to public speak. That's my entire job. I have to go up to people and make them feel like they want to do what I want them to do, even if they don't want to do it, right? I got to get them to yes. And the way that you practice that, especially when I was first getting started, is even at an event like this, I would say, okay, I'm going to talk to 5 people today, and I can't leave until I've had a meaningful, memorable, something interaction with 5 people. And then now there's LinkedIn. You go, you send a message on LinkedIn. I really enjoyed meeting you. I like talking about this, whatever. And then, now that I have business cards, I still do this. I decide when I go to an event, how many people do I have to talk to before I leave? Because I always want to leave to get home to my husband and my cats, right? How many do I have to talk to? And I count out that many business cards and I put them in my right pocket. And I can't leave until those business cards are gone and I have the same amount in my left pocket. But I can't just give them out. I have to have a meaningful interaction with that number of people, because that's really, I'm there to do my job. How many people do I have to talk to do my job? And maybe it's just one person. Maybe I look at the thing and I'm like, I just got to talk to that one person today. As soon as I talk to them, I can go. But that really, it's like giving yourself small metrics. So you've okay, I got to talk to 2 people today. I did it. All right, tomorrow I'm going to talk to 3, and building it that way.
I love your little tip about the business cards, because it reminded me of, I don't have them right now because I left my purse in the back of the room, but I would always have business cards in my left pocket. You shake somebody's hand with your right hand, and as you give them your business card with your left hand, you put their business card in your right pocket so they never get mixed up. A little trick for you to learn. And also, when you have your name tags on, when they give you name tags at events, always put it on your right side, because people, when they shake their hand, they're looking on your right side. If you put it on, every time I go into a conference, if I see somebody with that on their left side, I move it and I put it on the left side. Little tips for successful engagement.
I just want to quickly add, I am also a very anxious and introverted person. And the biggest thing that helps me is remembering that other people, if you're in a networking room, the other people there, they want to talk to you and they want to get to know you, and it's probably hard for them too. Or if you're reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, I get reached out to sometimes from kids from my high school. It makes my day, genuinely. Remembering that people, if they offer something, they mean it. If they offer you help, they mean it. It would make them happy to help you. Or, the person who's giving you your sandwich, they want you to get the sandwich that you want. Remembering that, and, you're not taking up space that's not yours. You're not being a burden. You're not because those anxiety thoughts, they get to you sometimes. People want you to be happy and successful, and by advocating for yourself and speaking up, you're helping them do that, and you're helping yourself at the same time. So just wanted to add that on.
One more, we have time for one more question.
Okay. My question is for Amy. Working with a woman shelter, I know just working with stuff that can be very traumatic, and hearing people's stories, it can become overwhelming and just help with burnout. How do you cope with that? Just all the stuff you take in.
That was great. A sense of humor helps a lot. It's really hard. When I was in direct service work, as a case manager, there's a lot of structure around that, and you have case consultations, you meet one-on-one with your supervisor. There's a lot of avenues to make sure that you're learning and talking and processing, and so that you go back and provide the right intervention or option or resource. And we do have where I work, we have some access to resources. That makes me feel good that I can be of help. I have learned from women throughout the years that when they have education about trauma, they do much better. So many women that are now advocates, they have jobs, they work for us, they're sitting on boards of directors, they've been through awful trauma, said by that time I finally got to a therapist who taught me about trauma. that it was so much better. So like I learn from people who've been through experiences and try to like make the programs meaningful and help them. But yeah, I mean, it's just overwhelming sometimes, even just being anyone in Los Angeles and driving and seeing the obvious need that's everywhere is hard. And I feel like that is all rooted in trauma that, could be prevented in so many different ways if we had better access to care and resources and housing and education, so much to work on. So, but I am surrounded by people who can help me if I'm feeling overwhelmed. And I feel like I can do something. So I don't feel particularly helpless in my work team.
We get one huge round of applause for amazing panel today.